The wedding was supposed to save them. Instead, Mara Vale found herself standing in front of a man they called the Silencer, watching her father's hand shake as he tried to explain why the bride had run and the money had vanished. Kieran Voss didn't blink. He just looked at Mara, the invisible daughter, the one nobody remembered existed, and smiled like he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. Her father opened his mouth to beg, but Mara stepped forward first. She didn't plead. She didn't cry. She made an offer no one in that cathedral expected. 8 minutes later, she walked out wearing a stranger's ring and a deal that would either kill her or set her free. If you want to see how far a woman can fall before she learns to fly, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. You're about to witness what happens when the wrong sister says yes. The cathedral smelled like gardenias and lies. Mara Vale stood in the vestibule with her back pressed against cold marble, watching her father pace in circles like a caged animal. Senator Richard Vale, the man half the country worshipped and the other half feared, was sweating through his custom suit. She'd never seen him sweat before. Not during campaign attacks, not during press ambushes, not even when his second wife died under circumstances the family never discussed. But today, he was drowning. "Where is she?" he hissed into his phone, voice low and venomous. "I don't care if you have to burn down every hotel in the state. Find Celeste, now." Mara didn't move. She'd learned a long time ago that staying still made her invisible, and invisible was safe. The wedding guests were already seated inside. Politicians, lobbyists, old money families who measured power in centuries instead of election cycles. They were waiting for a spectacle. A union between the Vale dynasty and the Voss syndicate, brokered in backroom deals Mara had helped draft but would never be credited for. Celeste was supposed to marry Kieran Voss, the man they whispered about in D.C. like he was a ghost story. The Silencer. The kingpin who controlled half the eastern seaboard's underground and had never been photographed, indicted, or caught. The marriage was a treaty, a business arrangement, a way to launder blood money into campaign funds. But Celeste was gone, and so was $8 million from the family safe. Mara's stepmother Diane stood near the altar entrance, clutching a champagne flute like it might save her. She looked at Mara the way she always did, like furniture that had been left in the wrong room. "Richard," Diane said, her voice brittle. "They're asking questions. We need to do something." The senator hung up and turned toward Mara. For the first time in her 26 years, he actually saw her. "You," he said. Mara's stomach dropped. "No," she said flatly. "You'll do it." "I'm not." "You'll put on that dress and you'll walk down that aisle and you'll smile." Mara laughed. It came out sharp and bitter. "You want me to marry a crime lord because Celeste decided to grow a spine? I want you to save this family." "This family?" Mara's voice rose. "You mean your career, your empire, your—" The slap came fast. Her cheek burned. Diane looked away. Senator Vale leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear. "You've been useful your entire life, Mara. Cleaning up messes, erasing scandals, fixing problems no one else can touch. This is just another problem. Fix it." Mara felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart, that had broken years ago. Something colder, sharper. Before she could respond, the cathedral doors opened. Kieran Voss walked in. The room didn't just go quiet. It went still. Like the air itself had stopped moving. He was taller than Mara expected. Broad-shouldered, dark-haired, dressed in black like he was attending a funeral instead of a wedding. His face was angular and unreadable, the kind of face that made people look away before they meant to. But his eyes, gray and cold and impossibly steady, landed on Mara and didn't move. Behind him came two men in dark suits. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Senator Vale stepped forward, hand extended. "Mr. Voss, there's been a complication." Kieran ignored the hand. He looked past the senator, past Diane, straight at Mara. "Where's the bride?" His voice was low, calm, the kind of calm that came right before violence. "She's indisposed," the senator said, forcing a smile. "But we have an alternative arrangement that I think you'll find." "I don't do alternatives." The senator's smile cracked. "Mr. Voss, please, let's be reasonable. The contract—" "The contract," Kieran interrupted, "specified Celeste Vale. Not a substitute. Not a replacement. Celeste. She's gone, Mara said. Kieran's gaze shifted to her. She felt the weight of it like a hand around her throat. Who are you? The other daughter, Mara said. The one nobody remembers. Something flickered in his expression. Interest, maybe, or recognition. She took the money, Mara continued. 8 million from the family's safe. She's been planning this for weeks. Senator Vale shot her a murderous look. Mara, she also took the files, Mara said, louder now. The ones you've been using to blackmail half of Congress, the shipping manifests, the offshore accounts, everything. The senator went pale. Kieran tilted his head slightly. You knew. I know everything, Mara said. It's my job. And you didn't stop her. I didn't care enough to, Kieran smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Interesting. One of Kieran's men stepped forward, hand moving toward his jacket. Mara's pulse spiked, but she didn't flinch. She'd spent her whole life reading people, politicians, staffers, criminals pretending to be donors. She knew when someone was bluffing. Kieran raised a hand. The man stopped. You're the fixer, Kieran said. It wasn't a question. Mara nodded. The one who buried the Cordova scandal. The one who made the Hartman investigation disappear. Among other things, Kieran stepped closer. Mara could smell him now, smoke and expensive cologne and something darker underneath. Your father thinks I'm here for a wedding, Kieran said quietly. But weddings are theater. I came for leverage, for access, for someone who knows where the bodies are buried. He paused. Celeste was supposed to be that person. Celeste, Mara said, is a socialite who can barely balance a checkbook. If you wanted a trophy wife, you're out of luck. If you wanted someone useful, you're talking to her. Senator Vale grabbed Mara's arm. That's enough. She yanked free. No, it's not. Kieran watched them like he was watching a play. The senator seems nervous. The senator, Mara said, is terrified you'll kill everyone in this building. I could. But you won't. Why not? Because you need something only I can give you. Kieran raised an eyebrow. Which is? Proof, Mara said. Celeste didn't just steal money. She stole evidence. Files that could destroy my father, dismantle his network, and expose half the people sitting in that cathedral. She's going to sell it to the highest bidder, maybe your enemies, maybe the feds, maybe both. Kieran's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. I can find her, Mara said. I built the system she's using to hide. I know every digital trail, every offshore account, every safe house she thinks is secret. Give me 72 hours and I'll hand you Celeste, the money, and every file she took. And what do you want in return? Mara hesitated. She hadn't thought this far ahead. She'd been improvising since the moment Kieran walked in. Freedom, she said finally. Kieran laughed. It was a cold, humorless sound. You think marrying me is freedom? I think, Mara said, that staying here is a death sentence. Kieran studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to Senator Vale. You raised a smart daughter, he said. Shame you never noticed. The senator's face went red. Mr. Voss, I can assure you. The deal's off, Kieran said. Diane gasped. Senator Vale looked like he'd been struck. Unless, Kieran continued, turning back to Mara, you walk down that aisle right now. Mara's breath caught. You marry me, Kieran said. You find Celeste. You deliver what she took. And in return, I don't burn this entire family to the ground. That's not freedom, Mara said. No, Kieran agreed, but it's the best offer you're going to get. Mara looked at her father. He was staring at her with something between desperation and disgust. Her whole life, she'd been his secret weapon, his shadow, the daughter he used but never claimed. She thought about Celeste, who'd been given everything, beauty, attention, a name people remembered. Celeste, who'd finally done something Mara had been too afraid to do. Run. But Mara wasn't running. She was walking straight into the fire. Fine, she said. Kieran extended his hand. Mara took it. His grip was firm. Final. Get her address, Kieran said to one of his men. Then to Mara. You have 8 minutes. The dress didn't fit. It was Celeste's dress, white silk and lace, designed for someone taller, thinner, more breakable. Mara stood in the bridal suite while Diane and two assistants tried to pin it to her body like she was a mannequin. "Hold still," Diane snapped. Mara didn't answer. She was staring at herself in the mirror, pale skin, dark hair pulled back too tight, eyes that looked like her mother's. Her real mother, not Diane. The woman Senator Vale had erased from every family photo, every public record, every story, dead at 34. Complications, they'd said. Mara had stopped believing that years ago. "You look beautiful," Diane lied. Mara met her eyes in the mirror. "You don't have to pretend." "I'm not." "You are." Mara turned. The assistants scattered. "You've always hated me, just like he does. So let's not waste time on fake compliments." Diane's face hardened. "You're making a terrible mistake." "I'm fixing his mistake," Mara said. "Like always. Kieran Voss is a monster. So is my father." Diane flinched. Mara adjusted the dress and walked out. But spammed. The cathedral was full of ghosts. That's what it felt like as Mara walked down the aisle. Every face a blur, every whisper a judgment. She didn't have a bouquet. She didn't have anyone to give her away. She just walked, one foot in front of the other, toward the man waiting at the altar. Kieran watched her approach with the same unreadable expression. No warmth, no cruelty, just calculation. When she reached him, he leaned in slightly. "Second thoughts?" he murmured. "Third and fourth," Mara said. "Good. That means you're smart." The officiant began speaking. Mara didn't hear the words. She was too busy scanning the room, looking for exits, counting the number of Kieran's men stationed near the doors. 12. Maybe 15. She was trapped. "Do you take this man?" "I do," Mara said. Kieran's turn. "I do." The officiant smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Kieran's hand came up to her jaw, tilting her face toward his. The kiss was brief, clinical, a signature on a contract. When he pulled back, he whispered against her ear, "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Voss." 18. The reception lasted 20 minutes. Mara didn't eat, didn't drink. She stood beside Kieran while politicians congratulated them, and donors asked intrusive questions, and photographers captured every forced smile. Senator Vale gave a speech about unity and partnership. He didn't look at Mara once. When it was over, Kieran's men escorted them to a black SUV waiting outside. Mara climbed in. Kieran followed. The door shut. The world went quiet. "Where are we going?" Mara asked. "Home," Kieran said. "I don't have a home." "You do now." The SUV pulled away from the cathedral. Mara watched the building shrink in the rearview mirror, the place where her life had ended and something else had begun. She didn't feel scared. She felt numb. Kieran was on his phone, speaking in clipped sentences to someone on the other end. Mara caught fragments, names she didn't recognize, locations she'd never heard of, codes that meant nothing to her. After a while, he hung up and looked at her. "You're wondering if I'm going to kill you," he said. Mara met his gaze. "Are you?" "Not yet." Comforting. Kieran almost smiled. "You've got 72 hours to prove you're worth keeping alive. I suggest you start thinking about how to find your sister." Mara pulled out her phone. It was dead. "They cut the service," she said. Kieran handed her a different phone, sleek, black, encrypted. "Everything you need is already loaded," he said. "Accounts, access codes, a direct line to me. Don't lose it." Mara turned the phone over in her hands. "You're trusting me with this?" "No," Kieran said. "I'm testing you." The Ironhold wasn't a house. It was a fortress, built on the edge of the water, all concrete and steel and bulletproof glass. It looked like something designed to survive a war. Guard towers, razor wire, men with rifles patrolling the perimeter. Mara's stomach twisted as the SUV passed through the gates. "Welcome home," Kieran said dryly. Inside, the building was colder than she expected. Industrial, functional, no art on the walls, no warmth anywhere. Kieran led her down a long hallway to a heavy steel door. He pressed his palm to a scanner. The lock disengaged. "Your room," he said, pushing it open. It wasn't a bedroom. It was a cell, concrete walls, a narrow bed, a single window with bars. Mara turned to him. You're kidding. You're not a wife, Kieran said. You're collateral. Until you deliver what you promised, this is where you stay. And if I don't deliver? Kieran stepped closer, close enough that Mara had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Then you become a liability, he said quietly, and I don't keep liabilities. He left. The door locked behind him. Mara stood there for a long moment, staring at the walls closing in around her. Then she sat down on the bed, pulled out the encrypted phone, and got to work. Celeste's digital trail was a mess. She tried to cover her tracks, rerouted transfers, fake shell companies, burner emails, but she'd done it sloppily. Mara had spent years teaching her father's people how to disappear. Celeste had paid attention, but not enough. It took Mara 4 hours to find the first thread, a wire transfer to a Cayman account. Small, just $50,000. But the routing number was one Mara recognized, a shell bank her father had used during the Cordova scandal. Celeste was using this family's own network against them. Smart. Stupid, but smart. Mara followed the trail deeper. More transfers, more shell companies. And then, buried in the metadata of an encrypted email, she found it. A reservation. The Opal Rose Hotel, Miami, Suite 1207, checked in under the name Clara Vane. Mara almost laughed. Celeste had always been terrible at aliases. She pulled up the hotel's security feed, another trick she'd learned from years of cleaning up her father's messes. The cameras were old, easy to crack, and there she was. Celeste Vale, standing in the lobby in oversized sunglasses and a floppy hat, looking like a B-list actress trying to go incognito. Mara took a screenshot, sent it to Kieran's number. 3 minutes later, the door to her room opened. Kieran stood in the doorway, phone in hand. Miami, he said. Miami, Mara confirmed. How sure are you? 90%. Not good enough. Mara stood. Then let me go down there and confirm it. Kieran stared at her. You think I'm letting you walk out of here? I think, Mara said, that you don't have a choice. Celeste knows me. She'll talk to me. She won't talk to you. She ran from you. She ran from my father, not me. Kieran considered this. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Get the plane ready, he said. We're going to Miami. He hung up and looked at Mara. We? She said. You don't go anywhere without me, Kieran said. Not until this is done. Tot. They left at dawn. The private jet was smaller than Mara expected. Sleek, efficient, designed for speed rather than comfort. Kieran sat across from her, reviewing files on a tablet. Mara watched the city disappear below them. You're wondering why I'm doing this, Kieran said without looking up. Mara didn't answer. Your sister killed someone, he continued. Someone important to me. Mara's breath caught. Who? My half-brother. Kieran finally looked at her. His name was Elias. He was trying to go legitimate, get out of the family business. Celeste seduced him, convinced him to help her access shipping routes, and then she put a bullet in his head and made it look like a rival hit. Mara felt cold. I didn't know. No one did, except me. And you didn't tell my father. Your father, Kieran said, doesn't care who Celeste killed as long as it doesn't affect his campaign. Mara looked away. He wasn't wrong. So this isn't about the money, she said. The money's a bonus, Kieran said. This is about justice. You mean revenge. Same thing. Mara met his eyes. And what happens to me when this is over? Kieran leaned back in his seat. That depends on you. Miami was a wall of heat. The moment Mara stepped off the plane, the humidity hit her like a fist. Kieran's men were already waiting, black SUVs, dark suits, weapons barely concealed. They drove straight to the Opal Rose. The hotel was exactly what Mara expected, overpriced, pastel-colored, dripping with old money and new cosmetic surgery. Celeste would feel right at home. Kieran's men secured the perimeter while Mara and Kieran went inside. The concierge barely glanced at them. Mara walked straight to the elevator. 12th floor, Suite 1207. Mara knocked. No answer. She knocked again. The door opened. Celeste stood there in a silk robe, champagne glass in hand, looking like she'd just stepped out of a spa. Then she saw Mara. The glass fell, shattered. "Hello, Celeste," Mara said. Celeste tried to slam the door. Kieran's boot stopped it. "We need to talk," Mara said, pushing inside. The suite was a disaster. Clothes everywhere, empty bottles, open suitcases with cash spilling out. Celeste backed away, eyes wide. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you." "Mara, please. Where are the files?" Celeste's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." Kieran closed the door behind them. Celeste saw him and froze. "You," she whispered. "Me," Kieran said. "Celeste," Mara said, keeping her voice calm. "Give us the files. Give us the money. And maybe you walk out of here alive." Celeste laughed. It was high and brittle and on the edge of breaking. "You think he's going to let me live?" She pointed at Kieran. "You think he's going to let either of us live? That's not—" "He killed Elias," Celeste screamed. "He put a bullet in his own brother and blamed it on me." Mara felt the floor tilt. She turned to Kieran. His expression hadn't changed. "Is that true?" Mara asked. Kieran didn't answer. Celeste was crying now. Elias found out what Kieran was really doing, the trafficking, the shipments. He was going to expose everything, so Kieran killed him and framed me. "You're lying," Mara said, but her voice shook. "Am I?" Celeste wiped her face. Ask him what he's really been moving through those shipping routes." Mara looked at Kieran. "Tell her," Celeste said. "Tell her what you are." Kieran's jaw tightened, and then the window exploded. Gunfire tore through the suite. Glass shattered. Mara hit the floor. Kieran was already moving, weapon drawn, returning fire. Celeste screamed. Mara crawled toward her, grabbed her arm. "We need to go, now!" But Celeste yanked free. She ran for the door, and a bullet caught her in the shoulder. She went down hard. Kieran was at the window, scanning the rooftops. "Snipers. 3, maybe 4. Mara pressed her hand to Celeste's wound. Blood poured between her fingers. "Stay with me," Mara said. Celeste's eyes were unfocused. "You married a monster," she whispered. "Yeah," Mara said. "I know." Kieran's men burst through the door. Orders were shouted. The room became chaos. And somewhere in the noise and smoke and blood, Mara realized something. She had no idea who was telling the truth, and she had just married the man who might have orchestrated all of it. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and blood. Celeste was unconscious, her breathing shallow and uneven. Mara kept pressure on the wound, her hands slick and shaking. Across from her, Kieran sat perfectly still, gun resting on his thigh, eyes on the window like he was waiting for the next attack. "Who were they?" Mara asked. Kieran didn't look at her. "I don't know yet." "You're lying." "Probably." Mara's jaw clenched. "If you want me to trust you—" "I don't want you to trust me," Kieran interrupted. "I want you to stay alive long enough to be useful." The ambulance lurched around a corner. Celeste groaned. Mara checked her pulse, weak but steady. "She said you killed your brother," Mara said quietly. Kieran's expression didn't change. "She says a lot of things." "Is it true?" He finally looked at her. His eyes were cold and flat, like something had died behind them a long time ago. "Does it matter?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" "Because," Mara said, "I need to know if I just signed my life over to a liar or a killer." Kieran smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Mara's skin crawl. "You signed your life over to both," he said. The safe house was in Coral Gables, tucked behind iron gates and palm trees that swayed in the humid night air. Kieran's men carried Celeste inside while Mara stood in the driveway trying to catch her breath. Her dress was ruined. Blood had soaked through the silk, turning white to rust. She looked down at her hands, still stained red, and felt something crack open inside her chest. She'd spent her entire life cleaning up messes, other people's violence, other people's mistakes. Now she was covered in it. "Inside," Kieran said, appearing beside her. Mara didn't move. "I need a minute." "You don't get a minute." "I need—" Kieran grabbed her arm, not rough but firm, and pulled her toward the house. Mara yanked free. "Don't touch me." He stopped, looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You're in shock," he said. "I'm fine." "You're not." Mara laughed, bitter and sharp. "What do you care?" Kieran's jaw tightened. "I don't. But if you fall apart now, you're useless to me." "Then maybe," Mara said, stepping closer, "you should have married someone who wasn't on the verge of a breakdown." They stood there, inches apart, both of them breathing hard. Mara could see the exhaustion in his face now, the lines around his eyes, the tightness in his shoulders. He looked older than she'd realized. Harder. "Inside," he said again, quieter this time. Mara followed. The house was sterile. White walls, minimal furniture, security cameras in every corner. It felt like a place designed to disappear in. Celeste was in the back bedroom, laid out on a surgical table, while one of Kieran's men, a wiry guy with steady hands and no bedside manner, worked on extracting the bullet. Mara watched from the doorway. The man didn't use anesthetic. Celeste was still unconscious, which was probably a mercy. "Will she live?" Mara asked. The man shrugged. "Depends on if the bullet nicked anything important. I'm a field medic, not a surgeon." Comforting. He glanced up at her. "You want comfort? Go to a hospital. You want discretion? You get me." Mara turned away. Kieran was in the living room, on the phone again. She caught fragments of the conversation. Names, coordinates, something about a shipment delayed in Newark. She walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water she didn't drink, and stared out the window at nothing. Her phone, the encrypted one Kieran had given her, buzzed. A message. No name, just a number. "You made a mistake." Mara's blood went cold. She turned, scanning the room. Kieran was still on the phone. His men were outside or in the back with Celeste. She typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who knows what your husband really is." Mara's hand shook. She glanced at Kieran. He was facing away from her, gesturing sharply at whoever was on the other end of the call. "What do you want? To help you. Before he kills you too." Mara deleted the conversation and shoved the phone in her pocket. An hour later, Celeste woke up screaming. Mara was at her side in seconds, gripping her hand. "You're okay, you're safe." Celeste's eyes were wild, unfocused. "Where am I?" "Coral Gables." "Kieran's safe house." "No." Celeste tried to sit up, gasped in pain, fell back. "No, no, no, we have to go, we have to." "Celeste, stop. You'll tear the stitches." "He's going to kill us," Celeste hissed, tears streaming down her face. "He's going to kill us both and no one will even look for us." "That's not—" "It is." Celeste grabbed Mara's wrist, her grip weak but desperate. "You don't know him. You don't know what he's done." Mara pulled her hand free gently. "Then tell me." Celeste's face crumpled. "Elias was good. He was trying to get out. He found proof, shipping manifests, photos, recordings, people being moved like cargo, women, kids, packed into containers and shipped to—" She choked on the words. "Kieran runs it all, the whole network, and when Elias tried to stop it, Kieran put a bullet in his chest and called it a gang hit." Mara felt sick. "How do you know this?" "Because Elias showed me," Celeste whispered. "Before he died, he gave me the files, said if anything happened to him I should run, so I ran." "And the money?" "Insurance. I needed enough to disappear, start over somewhere Kieran couldn't find me." Mara sat back, her mind racing. "If you have proof, why didn't you go to the police?" Celeste laughed, broken and bitter. "The police? Half of them are on Kieran's payroll. The other half are terrified of him." "You think anyone's going to touch the silencer?" "Then who sent you that message? The one that said I made a mistake?" Celeste froze. "What?" Mara pulled out the phone, showed her the screen. Celeste's face went pale. "That's not my number." "Then whose is it?" "I don't know." They stared at each other. "Someone's watching us," Mara said quietly. Kieran found her 20 minutes later, standing on the back patio, staring at the ocean. "Your sister's awake," he said. "I know." "She tell you her version of the story?" Mara turned to face him. "Is it a version, or is it the truth?" Kieran leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "What do you think?" "I think," Mara said, "that I don't know you well enough to tell when you're lying." "Smart," I also think, she continued, that Celeste is terrified of you, and people don't get that scared for no reason. Kieran was quiet for a moment. Then he pushed off the door frame and walked toward her, stopped a few feet away. You want the truth? He asked. Yes. Elias was my half-brother. Same father, different mothers. He was weak, sentimental, thought he could fix the world by exposing the people who run it. Kieran's voice was flat, emotionless. He got himself killed because he trusted the wrong person. Celeste. No, Kieran said. Your father. Mara's stomach dropped. What? Senator Vale was using Elias to move product, people, drugs, whatever paid. When Elias found out what was really in those shipments, he panicked, went to your father, begged him to shut it down. Kieran's jaw tightened. Your father had him killed, made it look like I did it, and Celeste played along because she wanted the money and the files. Mara felt like the ground had opened up beneath her. You're lying. Am I? My father's a lot of things, but he's not. A murderer? Kieran laughed. Mara, your father's been ordering hits since before you were born. You just cleaned up the paperwork. Mara's hands were shaking. Prove it. Kieran pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and handed it to her. It was a recording, audio only. 2 voices. One was her father's, the other she didn't recognize. The Voss kid's a problem. He's got proof, photos, manifests. If he talks, he won't. You're sure? I'm sure. By tomorrow, Kieran will have a dead brother and a reason to go to war with the Salvatores. 2 problems, 1 solution. And the girl? Celeste. She's useful. She'll keep Kieran distracted while we move the next shipment. After that, she's disposable. Mara's vision blurred. She shoved the phone back at Kieran. That could be faked, she said, but her voice was hollow. It's not. How do I know you didn't? Because, Kieran said, stepping closer, if I wanted to lie to you, I'd tell you something you wanted to hear. I'd tell you your father's a good man. I'd tell you Celeste is innocent. I'd tell you that marrying me was the right choice. He paused. But I don't do comfort. I do truth. And the truth is your father's a monster who used you your whole life and would have sold you the second you stopped being useful. Mara felt tears burning her eyes. She wouldn't let them fall. Why didn't you tell me before? She whispered. Because you wouldn't have believed me. And now? Now, Kieran said. You don't have a choice. Oh. Mara didn't sleep that night. She sat in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, replaying the recording in her head. Her father's voice. Calm. Clinical. Ordering a man's death like he was approving a campaign ad. She thought about all the years she'd spent protecting him, covering his scandals, erasing his mistakes. She told herself it was duty, family, loyalty. But it was never loyalty. It was survival. And now she was married to a man who might be just as bad. Or worse. Her phone buzzed. Another message. The files Celeste has aren't the only ones. There's a second set. Hidden. Your father doesn't know about them. Mara's pulse spiked. Where? Iron Hold, Kieran's encrypted server. Room 4B. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only one who can stop this. Before more people die. Mara stared at the screen. Then she got dressed. The Iron Hold was 40 minutes away. Mara took one of the cars from the safe house garage, keys left conveniently on a hook, and drove through the empty Miami streets, heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know if the messages were real or a trap. She didn't know if Kieran would kill her for leaving. She didn't know anything anymore, but she had to know the truth. The hold was dark when she arrived, only a few lights burning in the guard towers. Mara used the access code Kieran had given her, hoped he hadn't changed it, and slipped inside. The hallways were empty, silent. She found room 4B on the basement level behind 2 locked doors and a biometric scanner. She pressed her palm to the reader. It beeped red. Access denied. Mara cursed under her breath. She tried her thumb, her other hand. Nothing worked. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She spun. A woman stood at the end of the hallway. Tall, sharp-featured, dressed in black tactical gear. She had a gun on her hip, but her hands were empty. You're Mara, the woman said. Who are you? Nadia Cross, FBI. Mara's blood went cold. Nadia walked closer, hands raised. I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here to help. Help me do what? Burn it all down, Nadia said. Your father, Kieran, the whole network. Mara backed against the wall. You sent the messages? Yes. Why, bae? Because, Nadia said, Kieran Voss is working with us. He's been undercover for 2 years, feeding us intel on the trafficking network. But he's in too deep. He's starting to believe his own cover, and people are dying because of it. Mara felt like she'd been punched. Undercover. He was supposed to dismantle the operation from the inside. Instead, he's running it, and your father's his biggest partner. That doesn't make sense. Kieran hates my father. No, Nadia said. Kieran hates what your father represents, but he needs him. The senator's connections, his political cover, his shipments, it's all part of the network. And Kieran can't take him down without taking himself down too. Mara's head was spinning. So what do you want from me? Proof, Nadia said. The files Celeste stole aren't enough. We need the original manifests, the offshore accounts, the full ledger. It's all in that room. She pointed at the door behind Mara. But I can't get in. Kieran's the only one with access. Then why are you here? Nadia smiled grimly. Because you're his wife, which means you have something I don't. What? Leverage. Mara stared at her. You want me to betray him? I want you, Nadia said, to do the right thing. And what's that? Stop pretending you don't already know. Mara drove back to the safe house in silence, Nadia's words echoing in her head. When she walked in, Kieran was waiting. He stood in the living room, arms crossed, face unreadable. Where were you? He asked. Mara's throat went dry. I needed air. You took a car. I needed a lot of air. Kieran didn't smile. You went to the hold. Mara's heart stopped. How did... I have cameras everywhere, Kieran said. You think I wouldn't notice my wife breaking into restricted areas in the middle of the night? Mara forced herself to stay calm. I wasn't breaking in. I was looking for answers. And did you find any? No. Kieran stepped closer. You're lying. I'm not... You met with someone, he interrupted. A woman, black tactical gear, federal. Mara's stomach dropped. Kieran tilted his head. You want to tell me who she was, or should I guess? Mara swallowed hard. Nadia Cross. Kieran went very still. She said you're working with the FBI. Mara continued, her voice shaking. She said you're undercover, that you've been feeding them intel for 2 years. And you believed her. I don't know what to believe anymore. Kieran's expression was unreadable. What else did she tell you? That you're in too deep, that people are dying because of you, that you've become the thing you were supposed to destroy. Kieran laughed. It was cold and humorless. She's not wrong. Mara felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. So it's true. Parts of it. Which parts? Kieran turned away, ran a hand through his hair. I was FBI once, a long time ago. They recruited me because I had connections, a way in. They wanted me to infiltrate the network, gather evidence, bring it down from the inside. And I did, Kieran said. For a while. I fed them names, locations, shipments. But every time we got close to shutting it down, someone higher up would kill the investigation, bury the evidence, protect the people at the top. My father. Among others. Kieran turned back to her. So I stopped playing by their rules. I took over the network, made myself indispensable, and now I'm doing what the FBI never could. What's that? Dismantling it piece by piece. From the inside. Mara stared at him. By running it. Yes. That's insane. No, Kieran said. It's the only way. People are dying. People were already dying, Kieran shot back. The difference is now I control who lives and who doesn't. I decide which shipments go through and which ones get intercepted. I decide which networks collapse and which ones survive long enough to give me the next lead. You're playing God. I'm playing chess, Kieran said. And your father's the king I'm about to checkmate. Mara's head was spinning. Nadia said you've lost yourself, that you've become the monster you were hunting. Kieran stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat coming off him. Maybe I have, he said quietly. but at least I'm a monster who's trying to do something good. Can you say the same about the man who raised you? Mara couldn't answer, because she couldn't. Celeste was awake when Mara checked on her an hour later. She was sitting up in bed, pale and shaky, but alive. "You look like hell," Celeste said. "Thanks." "What happened?" Mara sat down in the chair beside the bed. "I met someone, FBI. She told me Kieran's working undercover." Celeste's eyes widened. "Do you believe her?" "I don't know. He admitted it, sort of." "Sort of?" "He said he was FBI. Past tense. Now he's just doing it his way." Celeste laughed bitterly. "His way? That's one way to describe running a trafficking empire." "He says he's dismantling it." "And you believe him?" Mara looked at her hands. "I don't know what I believe anymore." Celeste was quiet for a moment. Then she reached under her pillow and pulled out a small USB drive. "Elias gave me this," she said, "before he died. He said it had everything, the manifests, the ledgers, proof of who's really running the network." Mara took the drive carefully. "Why didn't you give this to the FBI?" "Because," Celeste said, "half the FBI's on the payroll. Nadia Cross might be clean, or she might be just another player. I don't trust anyone." "Then why are you giving it to me?" Celeste met her eyes. "Because you're the only person in this whole mess who's still trying to do the right thing, even if you don't know what that is yet." Mara stared at the drive in her palm. It was small, light, the kind of thing you could lose in a pocket, the kind of thing people killed for. "What's on it?" Mara asked. "The truth," Celeste said. "About Dad, about Kieran, about all of it." Mara closed her fist around the drive. "Don't open it here," Celeste warned. "Kieran's got cameras everywhere. Find somewhere safe, somewhere offline. And when you see what's on there," she paused, "don't let it break you." Mara waited until dawn. She slipped out of the safe house while Kieran's men were changing shifts, took the same car she'd used the night before, and drove until she found a 24-hour internet cafe on the edge of Little Havana. The place was almost empty, just a bored clerk and two teenagers playing video games in the corner. Mara bought an hour, sat down at a terminal in the back, and plugged in the drive. It took a moment to load. Then the screen filled with files, hundreds of them. Shipping manifests, financial records, photos, videos, audio recordings. Mara clicked on the first folder. Vale Enterprises, offshore accounts. Her father's name, over and over, tied to shell companies in the Caymans, Cyprus, Panama, millions of dollars moving through ghost accounts. She opened another folder. Ironhold Logistics, shipping manifests, Kieran's network. Detailed records of every shipment over the past 5 years. Dates, locations, contents. Some of them were labeled textiles or electronics. Others just had numbers. Mara clicked on one. A photo loaded. It was taken inside a shipping container, cramped, dark, and full of people. Women, children, huddled together like animals. Mara's hand flew to her mouth. She clicked on another photo, then another. Different containers, different faces. Same horror. She opened a video file. It started with shaky footage of a warehouse. Men in dark clothes moving crates. Then the camera zoomed in on one of the crates being opened. A girl climbed out. Couldn't have been more than 16. Eyes hollow, clothes filthy. Someone off camera said something in a language Mara didn't recognize. The girl flinched. Mara closed the video. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely move the mouse. She opened another folder. Operation Vesper, FBI correspondence. Emails. Dozens of them. Between Kieran and someone at the bureau. Codename, Handler. The most recent one was dated 3 weeks ago. Subject, escalation protocol. Kieran, you've gone dark for too long. We need an update. If you don't check in within 48 hours, we're pulling you out. N. Cross. Kieran's response was short. I'm close. One more shipment and I'll have enough to burn the whole network. Do not pull me out. Mara's breath caught. She scrolled further, found another email, this one from Kieran to Nadia, dated 2 months ago. Subject. The Senator Vale's protected, untouchable. He's got judges, cops, politicians, everyone who matters in his pocket. The only way to bring him down is from the inside. I need more time. Nadia's response. You're running out of time, and you're starting to sound like them. Mara sat back, her mind reeling. Kieran was telling the truth, at least part of it. He was trying to take down the network, but he was also running it, and her father was at the center of everything. She clicked on the last folder. Ledger of Souls. The file was massive, a spreadsheet with thousands of entries, names, dates, locations, payments, and a column labeled status. Most of the entries said delivered. Some said in transit. A few said deceased. Mara scrolled down, her stomach churning. Then she saw it. Her mother's name, Evelyn Vale. Status, delivered. Payment, $2.5 million. Date, August 14th, 1999. Mara stopped breathing. She clicked on the entry. A note expanded. Subject sold to private buyer in Prague. Senator Vale confirmed receipt of payment. Subject's daughter, Mara, age 5, retained for future leverage. Mara's vision blurred. She read it again and again. Her mother hadn't died. She'd been sold, and Mara had been kept as insurance. She barely made it to the bathroom before she threw up. When she got back to the safe house, Kieran was waiting on the front steps. He stood when he saw her, his expression unreadable. Where were you? He asked. Mara walked past him without answering. Mara. She kept walking. Kieran grabbed her arm. I asked you a question. Mara spun, ripped her arm free, and slapped him across the face. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. Kieran didn't move, just stared at her, a red mark blooming on his cheek. You knew, Mara said, her voice shaking. You knew what my father did, what he is, and you didn't tell me. I told you he was, you didn't tell me about my mother. Kieran went still. You have the files, Mara continued, the Ledger of Souls. You've had it this whole time. You knew she didn't die. You knew she was sold. And you let me walk into that cathedral thinking, her voice broke, thinking I was just fixing another one of his messes. Kieran's jaw tightened. I needed you to see it yourself. Why? Because, he said quietly, if I told you, you wouldn't have believed me. You would have defended him, justified it, the way you've been doing your whole life. You don't know that. Yes, Kieran said. I do. Mara wanted to scream, to hit him again, to run, but she couldn't, because he was right. If he'd told her a week ago that her father sold her mother, she would have called him a liar. She would have found a way to rationalize it, to make it make sense. But now she'd seen the proof, and there was no going back. What do you want from me? Mara whispered. Kieran stepped closer. I want you to help me destroy him. How? The gala. 2 days from now. Your father's hosting his presidential announcement. Every major donor, every politician, every person who matters will be there. So, Kieran said, we're going to walk in, upload the Ledger of Souls to every screen in that ballroom, and watch his empire burn. Mara stared at him. That's insane. It's justice. It's suicide. He'll have security everywhere, armed guards, federal agents. I know, Kieran said. That's why I need you. For what? To stand beside me, he said, and show the world that his own daughter believes he's guilty. Mara felt something cold settle in her chest. If I do this, she said slowly, there's no coming back. He'll disown me, destroy me. I'll lose everything. You already have, Kieran said. You just haven't admitted it yet. Mara looked at him, this man she'd married in desperation. This stranger who'd become the only person telling her the truth. And after? She asked. After we burn it all down. What happens to us? Kieran's expression softened, just slightly. I don't know, he said, but at least we'll still be breathing. Mara thought about her mother, about the years she'd spent believing a lie, about the little girl who'd been kept as leverage, groomed to be useful, trained to be invisible. She thought about Celeste, bleeding in a Miami hotel room. She thought about all the faces in those shipping containers, and she made her choice. Okay, she said, let's burn it down. Kieran's eyes flashed with something, relief, maybe, or vindication. Good, he said, because we've got 48 hours to pull this off. He turned to walk inside. Mara grabbed his wrist. Kieran. He stopped, looked back at her. If you're lying to me, she said quietly, if any of this is a setup, it's not. But if it is, Mara continued, I will make sure you burn with him. Kieran smiled. I wouldn't expect anything less. Inside, Celeste was packing, or trying to. She moved slowly, wincing with every motion, shoving clothes into a duffel bag with her good arm. Where are you going? Mara asked. Away, Celeste said. As far as I can get, you should do the same. I can't. Celeste stopped, turned to look at her. Why not? Because, Mara said, I'm done running. Celeste's face went pale. You're going to the gala. Yes. That's suicide. Probably. Mara, I need to know something, Mara interrupted. Did you love him? Elias? Celeste's expression crumpled. Yes. Then help me finish what he started. Celeste shook her head. I can't go back there. I can't face... I'm not asking you to come, Mara said. I'm asking you to give me everything you have. Every file, every piece of evidence, everything Elias died trying to expose. Celeste stared at her for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out another USB drive. This is everything, she said. The manifests, the payments, the names, even the stuff that didn't make it onto the first drive. Mara took it carefully. Thank you. Don't thank me, Celeste said. Just don't die. I'll try. Celeste pulled her into a hug, awkward and painful and desperate. I'm sorry, she whispered. For everything, for running, for leaving you with him, for... I know, Mara said. When they pulled apart, Celeste was crying. He's going to kill you, she said. Dad, when he realizes what you're doing... Let him try, Mara said. The next 48 hours were a blur. Mara and Kieran worked around the clock, piecing together the plan. Nadia Cross showed up at the safe house on the second day, bringing federal backup and enough firepower to start a small war. You sure about this? Nadia asked, looking at Mara. No, Mara said, but I'm doing it anyway. Nadia smiled grimly. Good. Because once we trigger this, there's no stopping it. The ledger goes live. Every agency in the country will be scrambling. Your father will be arrested within the hour. And Kieran? Nadia glanced at him. He's got immunity, for now, as long as he cooperates. And if he doesn't, then he goes down with the rest of them. Kieran didn't react. He just kept checking his weapons, a habit Mara had noticed over the past 2 days. He moved like a soldier, precise, methodical, always 3 steps ahead. What about me? Mara asked. Nadia hesitated. You're a witness. We'll protect you. That's not what I asked, Nadia sighed. The truth? I don't know. You've been complicit in covering up your father's crimes for years. A good prosecutor could argue you're an accessory. But, Nadia said, you're also the key to taking him down, so we'll do everything we can to keep you out of jail. Comforting. It's the best I can offer. Mara looked at Kieran. He met her eyes, and something passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or an acknowledgement of what they were about to do. We're ready, Kieran said. Nadia nodded. Then let's go to war. The dress arrived at dawn. Not a wedding dress this time, something else. Black silk with a high collar and a slit up the side. Elegant and lethal. Mara held it up to the light streaming through the safe house window and felt her stomach twist. You don't have to wear it, Kieran said from the doorway. Mara didn't turn around. Yes, I do. There's still time to back out. No, Mara said quietly. There isn't. She heard him walk closer, felt his presence behind her. They'd barely spoken since Nadia arrived, both of them moving through the plan like soldiers preparing for battle. No small talk, no comfort, just logistics and contingencies and the cold mathematics of what they were about to do. Your father will recognize you the moment you walk in, Kieran said. Good. He'll know something's wrong. Let him. Kieran was quiet for a moment. Then he reached past her and touched the fabric of the dress, his fingers brushing against hers. "You're not the same person who walked into that cathedral," he said. Mara finally turned to face him. "No, I'm not." His eyes searched hers. "Are you scared?" "Terrified." "Good," Kieran said. "Fear keeps you sharp." Mara wanted to ask him if he was scared too, if he'd thought about what happened after they pulled this off, assuming they survived. If he wondered whether the immunity deal would hold or if Nadia would turn on him the moment the dust settled. But she didn't ask, because she wasn't sure she wanted the answers. Chad, the presidential gala was being held at the Willard Hotel, a gilded monument to power in the heart of Washington. Mara had been to a dozen events there over the years, fundraisers, campaign rallies, victory parties. She knew every hallway, every exit, every camera blind spot. That knowledge might be the only thing keeping her alive tonight. They arrived separately. Kieran came in through the main entrance with a small entourage of his men, all of them dressed in expensive suits that barely concealed their weapons. Mara came in through the service entrance with Nadia, who was posing as hotel security. "Comms check," Nadia said, pressing a finger to the nearly invisible earpiece in Mara's ear. Mara heard Kieran's voice, low and clear. "I'm in position." "Copy that," Nadia said. "Mara, you're clear to move." Mara adjusted the strap of her clutch. Inside was a compact tablet loaded with every file from the Ledger of Souls, ready to broadcast the moment she gave the signal. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. "Remember," Nadia said quietly, "once you trigger the upload, you've got maybe 90 seconds before security shuts down the network. Make them count." Mara nodded. "And Mara?" Nadia's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, you're doing the right thing." "Tell me that when it's over," Mara said. She walked into the ballroom. The room was exactly as she remembered. Crystal chandeliers casting soft light over marble floors. Tables draped in white linen. A stage at the far end where her father would make his announcement. Hundreds of people in evening wear, drinking champagne and trading power like currency. Mara moved through the crowd like a ghost. A few people glanced at her, some with recognition, most without. She'd spent so many years being invisible that even dressed like this, she barely registered. Then she saw her father. Senator Richard Vale stood near the stage, surrounded by a tight circle of advisors and donors. He was smiling, shaking hands, playing the role he'd perfected over decades. The statesman, the leader, the man who would save America. Mara's hands clenched into fists. She forced herself to breathe, to move, to keep walking. Kieran's voice crackled in her ear. "I see him, second floor balcony, 3 o'clock. Mara's gaze flicked up. Her father's head of security was positioned there with a clear view of the ballroom. 2 more guards flanked the stage entrance. "There are at least a dozen armed personnel in here," Mara murmured, her lips barely moving. 14, Kieran corrected. "I've counted." Confident. Thorough. Mara almost smiled. Then Diane appeared in front of her. Her stepmother looked thinner than the last time Mara had seen her, her face tight with whatever combination of Botox and stress kept her functioning. She stared at Mara like she was seeing a corpse walk. "What are you doing here?" Diane hissed. "I was invited," Mara said calmly. "You can't be here. Not after—" Diane glanced around, lowered her voice. "Not after what you did, running off with that man, humiliating your father." "Humiliating him?" Mara laughed. "Diane, I saved him. I married the man he owed $8 million to. I fixed his mess. Like always." Diane's face flushed. "You need to leave, now, before he sees you." "Too late," Mara said, looking past her. Senator Vale was walking toward them, his smile fixed in place, but his eyes cold and furious. "Mara," he said, his voice measured. "What a surprise." "Hello, Father." He took her arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Excuse us," he said to Diane, already pulling Mara toward a side hallway. Mara went willingly. This was part of the plan. She heard Kieran's voice in her ear. "I'm moving to intercept." "No," Mara breathed. "Not yet." Her father dragged her into a private room off the main ballroom, some kind of VIP lounge with leather chairs and a bar stocked with liquor that cost more than most people's rent. He released her arm and closed the door behind them. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. Mara adjusted her dress, bought herself a second to think. "I came to see you make history." "Don't play games with me." "I'm not." Senator Vale stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You disappeared for 3 days. Married a criminal. Helped your sister steal from me. And now you show up here like nothing happened?" "Celeste is the one who ran," Mara said. "I stayed. I cleaned up your mess. Again. By marrying Kieran Voss. By making sure he didn't kill you." Her father's jaw tightened. "Where is she?" "Who, Celeste?" "Don't be stupid." "I don't know," Mara lied. "She's gone. Probably somewhere warm with a fake passport and your money." Senator Vale's hand shot out and grabbed her throat. Not hard enough to choke her, but enough to make his point. Mara gasped, her hands flying up to his wrist. "You think I'm an idiot?" he snarled. "You think I don't know you helped her?" Mara clawed at his hand. Spots danced in her vision. The door burst open. Kieran stood in the doorway, gun drawn. Senator Vale released Mara immediately, stepping back with his hands raised. "Mr. Voss, I was just strangling my wife," Kieran finished. His voice was calm, but his eyes were lethal. "I noticed." Mara coughed, her hand going to her throat. Kieran crossed the room in 3 strides and positioned himself between her and her father. "Touch her again," Kieran said quietly, "and I'll put a bullet in your skull before your security even reaches the door." Senator Vale forced a smile. "There's no need for threats. This is a family matter." "She's not your family anymore," Kieran said. "She's mine." Mara's heart was pounding. She could feel the weight of the tablet in her clutch, the seconds ticking away. They needed to get back to the ballroom. They needed to execute the plan. But her father was staring at Kieran with an expression Mara had never seen before. Not fear, not anger. Recognition. "You're not here for the gala," Senator Vale said slowly. Kieran didn't respond. "You're here for me." "Among other things." Senator Vale laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. "You think you can take me down? You think walking in here with some files and a vendetta is going to destroy what I've built?" "I don't think," Kieran said. "I know." "Then you're more naive than I gave you credit for." Senator Vale walked to the bar, poured himself a scotch like they were having a casual conversation. "Do you know how many people have tried to expose me over the years? Journalists, prosecutors, even a few senators with delusions of moral superiority. They all failed. Because I don't just have money, Mr. Voss. I have leverage on everyone who matters." "Not everyone," Mara said, her voice hoarse. Her father turned to her. "You think you're different? You think because you're my daughter, you're immune?" "No," Mara said. "I think because I'm your daughter, I know exactly where all the bodies are buried." Senator Vale's expression darkened. "Careful, Mara." "Or what?" she challenged. "You'll disown me? Ruin me? You already did that when you sold my mother." The room went silent. Senator Vale's hand tightened around his glass. "What did you say?" "I know," Mara said, stepping forward. "I know what you did to her. I know about the ledger. I know about the shipments. I know everything." Her father's face went pale, then red, then something worse than anger. "You stupid girl," he said softly. He pulled out his phone. Kieran raised his gun. "Put it down." "Or what? You'll shoot me? In a building full of federal agents and security?" Senator Vale smiled. "I don't think so." He pressed a button on his phone, and the lights went out. The ballroom plunged into darkness. Mara heard screams, gunfire, the sound of chairs crashing and glass shattering. Then emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in sickly red. Kieran grabbed Mara's arm. "We need to move, now!" But before they could reach the door, it burst open again. Men in tactical gear poured into the room. Not Kieran's men, not FBI. Private security. Her father's. "Kill them both," Senator Vale said calmly. Kieran fired. 2 men dropped. But more kept coming. Mara dove behind the bar as bullets tore through the leather chairs where she'd been standing. Kieran returned fire, methodical and precise, but they were outnumbered. "Nadia!" Mara screamed into her earpiece. "We need backup." Static. "Nadia!" Nothing. Kieran ducked behind the bar beside her, reloading. Blood streaked his shirt. Mara didn't know if it was his. "The comms are jammed," he said. "What do we do?" Kieran looked at her. For the first time since she'd met him, she saw something like fear in his eyes. "We run," he said. They bolted for the side exit. Bullets chased them down the hallway. Mara's heels slowed her down. She kicked them off and ran barefoot across marble and carpet, the tablet clutched to her chest. Behind them, she heard her father's voice echoing through the chaos. "Find them! I don't care what it takes. Find them!" They made it to the service stairwell before the next wave hit. Kieran pulled Mara through the door and slammed it shut, bracing it with his body while she searched for something to barricade it with. There was nothing, just concrete walls and metal stairs leading down into darkness. "Go," Kieran said. "I'll hold them." "No. Mara, go!" She ran, down 3 flights, 4. She lost count. Her lungs burned, her feet were bleeding, but she kept running. Until she hit the basement level and found the door locked, she yanked on it, slammed her shoulder against it. Nothing. Behind her she heard footsteps. Voices. Getting closer. She was trapped. Then a hand grabbed her arm and pulled her into a side corridor she hadn't seen. Mara spun, ready to fight. Nadia Cross stood there, finger to her lips. "Quiet," she mouthed. They pressed against the wall as the tactical team thundered past, heading up the stairs toward Kieran. Mara's heart was in her throat. "Where were you?" Mara hissed once they were gone. "Dealing with a problem," Nadia said grimly. "Your father had a contingency. He knew we were coming." "How?" "I don't know. But half my team's been detained. The other half is pinned down on the 3rd floor. We're fucked." Mara's hands were shaking. "Kieran's still up there." "I know. We have to help him." "We have to get you out," Nadia said. "You're the only one with the full ledger. If they get that tablet—" "I'm not leaving him." "Mara, I'm not leaving him." Nadia stared at her. Then she pulled out her service weapon and handed it to Mara. "Then we go together," she said. "Das." They found Kieran on the 2nd floor, pinned down behind an overturned catering cart. Bodies littered the hallway. His men, her father's security. Impossible to tell who was winning. Mara and Nadia opened fire from behind, catching the tactical team in a crossfire. 3 men dropped. The rest scattered. Kieran looked up, saw Mara, and his expression shifted from relief to fury. "I told you to run!" "When have I ever listened to you?" Mara shot back. He almost smiled. They regrouped in a maintenance room, barricading the door with a filing cabinet. Kieran was bleeding from his shoulder. Nadia had taken a round to the leg but was still standing. Mara was somehow untouched, though her dress was shredded and her hands were covered in someone else's blood. "The upload," Kieran said, breathing hard. "Did you trigger it?" Mara pulled out the tablet. The screen was cracked but functional. "Not yet," she said. "The network's jammed. I can't get a signal." "Then we need to get to the server room," Nadia said. "It's in the basement. Hardwired connection." "That's where they'll be waiting," Kieran said. "Then we'll go through them." Itin. They moved fast and low, taking back corridors and service elevators that Mara knew from years of navigating this building. Twice they ran into security. Twice they fought their way through. Mara was operating on pure adrenaline now. Her hands didn't shake when she fired. Her mind didn't freeze when bodies dropped. She'd crossed some invisible line and couldn't find her way back. The server room was behind a locked steel door on the lowest basement level. Nadia bypassed the security panel while Kieran and Mara covered their backs. The door hissed open. Inside was a maze of humming machines and blinking lights, and standing in the center of it all, waiting, Senator Richard Vale. He wasn't alone. A dozen armed men flanked him, weapons trained on the doorway. "Hello, Mara," he said calmly. Mara raised her gun. "Move." "Or what? You'll shoot me? Your own father?" "You're not my father," Mara said. "You're the man who sold my mother and tried to sell me." Senator Vale tilted his head. "Is that what this is about? Some misguided sense of justice?" "No," Mara said. "This is about making sure you never hurt anyone again." "Noble," her father said. "Naive, but noble." He gestured to his men. "Lower your weapons, all of you, or my daughter and her friends die right here." Kieran didn't move. We're not lowering anything. Then I suppose we're at an impasse. Not quite, Nadia said. She pulled out a radio and pressed the button. This is Agent Cross. Execute Plan Delta. Senator Vale frowned. What? The building shook. Mara stumbled, caught herself against the wall. Alarms started blaring. Red emergency lights flooded the basement. What did you do? Senator Vale demanded. I called in a bomb threat, Nadia said calmly. In about 3 minutes, every federal agency in the city is going to descend on this building, including the ones you don't own. Senator Vale's face went white. You have 2 choices, Nadia continued. Surrender now and maybe, you get a trial. Or stay here and go down with everything you've built. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Senator Vale smiled. You think I'm going to surrender? He pulled out a detonator. If I go down, I'm taking all of you with me. Mara's blood went cold. What is that? Insurance, her father said. The real kind, not the half measures you're so fond of. He looked at Kieran. Did you really think I'd host a presidential announcement without a contingency plan? There's enough C4 wired into this building's foundation to level 3 city blocks. You're bluffing, Kieran said. Am I? Senator Vale pressed a button on the detonator. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. His expression shifted from confidence to confusion to rage. What did you do? He snarled. Nadia smiled. I defused it. While you were busy hunting us through the building, my team was in the sub-basement cutting wires. Senator Vale's hand shook. You're lying. No, Nadia said. I'm thorough. The senator's men were looking at each other now, uncertain. The sound of sirens was growing louder outside. It's over, Dad, Mara said quietly. Senator Vale looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment she saw something almost human in his eyes. You know what you've done, he said. The enemies you've made? The people who will come after you? I know, Mara said. You'll never be safe. I was never safe with you. Senator Vale's face twisted, then he lunged, not at Mara, at Kieran. He grabbed for Kieran's gun, fast and desperate. They struggled. Mara screamed. Nadia raised her weapon. The gun went off. Senator Vale staggered back, a red stain spreading across his chest. He looked down at the wound, then at Mara. You should have stayed invisible, he whispered, and he collapsed. The aftermath was chaos. Federal agents swarmed the building. EMTs rushed in. Mara sat on the floor in the server room, watching them zip her father into a body bag, and felt nothing. Kieran was beside her, his shoulder bandaged, his face unreadable. He's really dead, Mara said. Yes. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, grief, anything. Give it time, Kieran said. Nadia appeared in the doorway, limping but alive. We got the upload, she said. The ledger's going live on every news network in the country. It's done. Mara nodded numbly. There's going to be questions, Nadia continued. A lot of them, from the bureau, from the press, from... I know, Mara said. Nadia hesitated. Then she crouched down in front of Mara. For what it's worth, you did good. Better than good. You saved a lot of lives tonight. Did I? Mara looked at the body bag. Or did I just add to the body count? You would have kept going, Nadia said. Kept hurting people. You stopped that. Mara wanted to believe her. She wasn't sure she could. They took her to a federal facility for debriefing. 72 hours of questions, statements, and lawyers arguing over whether she was a witness or an accomplice. Kieran was in another room going through the same thing. Mara didn't see him again until they released her. He was waiting outside, leaning against a black SUV, looking exhausted, but whole. You're free to go, he said when she approached. So are you, apparently. Immunity's a hell of a thing. Mara stopped a few feet away from him. What happens now? Kieran straightened. I don't know. The network's collapsing. Half the people in the ledger are in custody, the other half are running. He paused. Nadia wants me to testify. Help build cases against the ones who got away. Will you? Probably. He looked at her. What about you? Mara thought about the question, about the life she'd left behind, the father she'd killed, the mother she'd never find. I don't know, she said honestly. Kieran stepped closer. You could disappear. New name, new life. I could help with that. Is that what you want? What I want, Kieran said slowly, doesn't matter. Yes, it does. He searched her face. I want you to be safe. I'll never be safe, Mara said. You said that yourself, the enemies we made, the people who'll come after us. Then we deal with them. We? Kieran's expression softened. If you want. Mara looked at this man who'd been a stranger 3 weeks ago. This criminal, this undercover agent, this person who'd somehow become the only constant in her shattered world. I want, she said. Kieran pulled her close. Not a kiss, just his forehead pressed against hers, both of them breathing hard, both of them alive. Then we figure it out, he said, together. But that night, alone in the safe house Nadia had provided, Mara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the ledger, about all the names on it, all the faces in those shipping containers, and about one name in particular. Evelyn Vale. Status, delivered. Payment, $2.5 million. Date, August 14th, 1999. Her mother was out there, somewhere. Maybe still alive, maybe not. But Mara needed to know. She pulled out her laptop and started digging, tracking the payment trail, following the shell companies, looking for any trace of where Evelyn Vale had ended up after she was sold. It took 6 hours. When she found it, she almost wished she hadn't. A death certificate, Prague, 2003. Cause of death, suicide. Mara stared at the screen until the words blurred. Her mother had survived 4 years after being sold. 4 years. And then she'd given up. Mara closed the laptop. She sat in the dark and let herself cry for the first time since this whole nightmare started. 2 days later, a package arrived at the safe house. No return address, no note, just a USB drive. Mara plugged it in. One file, video footage. She pressed play. The video showed a warehouse, dark, industrial. The camera angle suggested it was security footage from a fixed position. 2 figures entered the frame, Senator Richard Vale and Kieran Voss. Mara's breath caught. The timestamp read 3 months ago. Before the wedding. Before any of this started. In the video, her father and Kieran were talking. The audio was faint, but Mara cranked the volume. Need someone on the inside, her father was saying. Someone who can control the damage when this all comes out. And you think your daughter can do that? Kieran's voice. Mara's been cleaning up my messes her whole life. She'll do what needs to be done. And if she doesn't? Senator Vale smiled. Then you'll handle her, the same way you handled Elias. Mara's stomach dropped. The FBI doesn't know about this arrangement, Kieran said. It wasn't a question. The FBI, Senator Vale said, knows what I tell them to know. They shook hands. The video ended. Mara sat frozen, staring at the blank screen. Kieran had been working with her father, the marriage, the plan, everything. It was all a setup. She heard the front door open, footsteps in the hallway. Kieran appeared in the doorway, holding takeout bags. Thought you might be hungry, he said. Mara stood slowly, the USB drive clutched in her hand. When were you going to tell me? She asked, her voice hollow. Kieran's expression didn't change. Tell you what? Mara held up the drive. His face went carefully blank. Where did you get that? Does it matter? Kieran set down the food. Mara, you were working with him, she said. With my father. You've been working with him this whole time. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it? Mara's voice rose. Because it looks like you played me, used me, made me think I was doing the right thing when really I was just another pawn in whatever game you and my father were. Your father's dead, Kieran interrupted, because you killed him. No, Kieran said, because he pulled a gun and I defended myself. That's what happened. After you set the whole thing up, after you... Mara's voice broke. You knew. You knew about my mother. You knew about the ledger. You knew everything, and you used it to manipulate me into what? Kieran stepped closer. into exposing one of the most dangerous trafficking networks in the country, into saving hundreds of lives, into finally escaping the man who was going to sell you the moment you stopped being useful? You lied to me. I protected you. They stood there, both breathing hard, the truth sitting between them like a bomb. The video's old, Kieran said finally. From before I knew who you really were. Before He stopped. Before you what? Kieran's jaw tightened. Before I realized you deserved better than what he was planning for you. And what was he planning? After the election, Kieran said quietly, he was going to have you disappeared. Sell you off to one of his overseas partners. Clean slate. No loose ends. Mara felt cold. You're lying. I'm not. Prove it. Kieran pulled out his phone, navigated to a folder, handed it to her. Email chains, encrypted messages, all between Senator Vale and various buyers. One subject line made Mara's blood freeze, M. Vale. Final arrangements. She opened it. The message was clinical, detached, listing her like a commodity, age, education, skills, price. Mara dropped the phone. Kieran caught it. I'm sorry. Get out, Mara whispered. Mara, get out! Kieran stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. The door closed. Mara sank to the floor. She'd destroyed her father, burned down his empire, exposed his crimes, but she'd done it with the help of a man who'd been planning to betray her from the start. And now she had nothing. No family, no allies, no idea who to trust. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed the only number she could think of. Celeste answered on the third ring. Mara? I need help, Mara said, her voice breaking. Where are you? I don't know anymore. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm coming. Stay where you are. I'm coming. Mara ended the call. She sat in the dark safe house, surrounded by the wreckage of everything she thought was true, and realized something. She'd been played. By her father. By Kieran. By everyone. And the only way to survive now was to become someone they'd never see coming. Someone who didn't clean up messes. Someone who created them. Mara stood, wiped her face, and started planning her next move. Because if they wanted a monster, she'd give them one. Celeste arrived at dawn with a rental car, fake IDs, and enough cash to disappear for 6 months. She found Mara sitting on the safe house floor surrounded by printouts from the USB drive, her face hollow and her eyes red from crying or rage or both. Jesus, Celeste breathed, dropping to her knees beside her. What happened? Mara didn't look up. Kieran was working with Dad. What? The whole thing, the marriage, the plan, all of it. Mara's voice was flat, empty. He was supposed to control me, make sure I didn't expose anything that would hurt the wrong people. Celeste grabbed the nearest printout, scanned it, went pale. This can't be real. It is. But he helped you, Celeste stopped. The gala, the upload, why would he go through with it if he was working with Dad? I don't know, Mara said. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe it was always part of a bigger play. Maybe I'm just the idiot who believed him. Celeste pulled her into a hug. Mara resisted for a second, then collapsed against her sister, shaking. We need to leave, Celeste said. Right now, before Kieran or the FBI or whoever sent you that drive finds us. No. Celeste pulled back. What do you mean, no? Mara stood, her jaw set. I'm done running, done being used, done letting other people decide what happens to me. Mara said, he has files, Mara interrupted. Kieran, in the iron hold, the originals, everything the FBI doesn't have, evidence that could destroy everyone who's left, the buyers, the politicians, the ones who got away. So what? Let the FBI deal with it. The FBI's compromised, Mara said. Dad said it himself. Half of them are on the payroll. And Nadia, she stopped, thinking about the agent who'd supposedly been helping them. I don't know who she's really working for. Then what are you going to do? Mara looked at her sister. I'm going to take everything, the files, the evidence, the leverage, and I'm going to burn every single person who thought they could use me. Celeste stared at her. That's insane. Probably. You'll get yourself killed. Maybe, Mara said, but at least I'll go down fighting instead of running. Celeste was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, crossed to the duffel bag she'd brought, and pulled out a handgun. Then I'm coming with you, she said, checking the magazine. Mara blinked. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Celeste's eyes were hard. Elias died trying to stop this. The least I can do is finish what he started. They planned for 24 hours. Mara knew the Ironhold's layout by heart now. Every hallway, every security checkpoint, every blind spot in the camera system. She'd memorized it during her time there, filing away details the way she'd been trained to do. The problem wasn't getting in, it was getting out alive. Kieran will have tripled security after what happened at the gala, Mara said, spreading blueprints across the kitchen table. Armed guards, biometric locks, maybe even motion sensors in the restricted areas. Can we hack it? Celeste asked. Not from outside, we'd need to be in the building, close to the servers. So we need a distraction. Mara looked up. A big one. Celeste smiled grimly. I might know someone who can help with that. The someone turned out to be a wiry kid named Marcus, who looked about 19 and claimed to have hacked into the Pentagon's email system on a dare. Celeste had found him through Elias's old contacts, part of an underground network of people who'd been fighting the trafficking rings long before Mara knew they existed. You want me to what? Marcus said, staring at them like they'd lost their minds. Crash the power grid for a 10-block radius, Mara repeated, just for 90 seconds, long enough for us to get through the security doors before the backup generators kick in. That's a federal crime. So is human trafficking, Celeste said. Pick your battles. Marcus looked between them, then he pulled out his laptop. When? Tomorrow night, 11 p.m. He typed for a few seconds, pulling up schematics of the city's power infrastructure. I can do it, but you'll have to move fast. 90 seconds is all you're getting before the whole grid reroutes and every cop in the city shows up. That's all we need, Mara said. They spent the next day gathering supplies. Tactical gear, bolt cutters, a portable hard drive with enough storage to copy everything in Kieran's servers. And weapons. More weapons than Mara had ever held in her life. She sat on the motel bed that night, field stripping a Glock the way Kieran had taught her during one of their quiet moments at the safe house. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over while her mind raced. She kept seeing the video, her father and Kieran shaking hands, making a deal, trading her life like she was currency. Part of her wanted to believe Kieran had changed, that somewhere between the wedding and the gala, he'd decided she was worth more than whatever her father had promised him. But the other part, the part that had spent her whole life watching people lie, knew better. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Celeste appeared in the doorway, already dressed in black tactical gear. You ready? Mara reassembled the gun and holstered it. No, but let's go anyway. Chat. The Ironhold looked different at night, more fortress than building. Floodlights swept the perimeter, guard towers manned by men with rifles. The water beyond reflected nothing, a black void stretching to nowhere. Mara and Celeste approached from the south side, using the industrial debris and abandoned warehouses for cover. Marcus was in position 3 blocks away, fingers hovering over his keyboard. Radio check, Mara whispered into her earpiece. Copy, Celeste said from her position near the east gate. Ready when you are, Marcus's voice crackled. Mara checked her watch. 10:58 p.m. She thought about turning back, about disappearing the way Celeste had tried to, about letting the FBI or whoever finish this fight. But then she thought about her mother, about the shipping containers, about every person her father had sold, and every person Kieran had failed to save. Do it, she said. Marcus hit enter. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the lights went out. All of them. The floodlights, the guard towers, the building itself. 10 blocks of Washington, D.C. plunged into darkness. Mara ran. She hit the south entrance at full speed using the bolt cutters on the chain-link fence. The biometric lock on the door was dead, just like Marcus promised. She yanked it open and slipped inside. Celeste's voice crackled in her ear. I'm in. East wing clear. Copy. Heading to the server room. Mara moved through the dark hallways like a ghost, her night vision adjusting, counting the seconds in her head. 45, 50, 60. She reached the basement level. The server room door was ahead, sealed with a keypad that was now useless. She pulled out a pry bar and wedged it into the frame, using all her weight to force it open. The metal groaned, bent. 75 seconds. The door gave way. Mara stumbled into the server room just as the backup generators kicked in. Emergency lights flooded the space, bathing everything in red. And standing in the center of the room, waiting, Kieran. He wasn't alone. 4 of his men flanked him, weapons drawn. Mara froze, her hand moving to her gun. "Don't," Kieran said quietly. She didn't listen. She pulled the weapon, aimed it at his chest. "I should have known you'd come here," he said. "You lied to me," Mara said, her voice shaking with rage. "You used me." "Yes." The admission hit her like a punch. "Why?" "Because," Kieran said, "your father promised me something I couldn't refuse." "What?" "A way out." Kieran's expression was unreadable. "Complete immunity, protection from the syndicate, a clean slate. All I had to do was marry you, keep you contained, and make sure the ledger never saw the light of day." Mara's hands tightened on the gun. "Then why did you let me expose him?" Kieran was quiet for a moment. Then he stepped forward, his men tensing but not moving. "Because somewhere between the cathedral and the gala," he said, "I realized I didn't want a clean slate. I wanted to burn the whole thing down, even if it meant burning myself with it." "I don't believe you." "I don't care if you believe me," Kieran said. "I'm telling you the truth." "The truth?" Mara laughed bitterly. "You don't even know what that means." "Maybe not," Kieran said, "but I know what I saw in that ballroom. I saw a woman who was willing to destroy her own father to save people she'd never met. I saw someone who could have run but stayed and fought instead." He paused. "I saw someone worth protecting." "Then why are you pointing guns at me?" "Because," Kieran said, "you broke into my facility, disabled my security, and you're about to steal classified files that could get both of us killed." "So stop me," Kieran smiled. It was sad and tired and maybe a little bit real. "I'm trying to," he said, "but not the way you think." He gestured to his men. They lowered their weapons. Mara didn't lower hers. "What are you doing?" "Giving you a choice," Kieran said. "You can take the files, copy everything, walk out of here and do whatever you want with them. But if you do, you'll spend the rest of your life running. From the people in that ledger, from the ones who got away, from everyone who wants you dead for what you know." "And option 2? Let me help you finish this," Kieran said. "The right way. We take the files to someone who can actually use them, someone outside the FBI, outside the system. We make sure every single person in that ledger goes down." "Who?" "Nadia has a contact, International Criminal Court. They've been building a case against the network for years. With these files, they can prosecute everyone. No immunity deals, no political cover, just justice." Mara stared at him. "And I'm supposed to trust you?" "No," Kieran said. "You're supposed to trust yourself. Trust that you're smart enough to know when someone's lying and when they're not." Mara's finger rested on the trigger. Every instinct screamed at her to pull it, to end this, to make him pay for every lie, every manipulation, every moment she'd thought he actually cared. But she looked in his eyes and saw something she recognized: exhaustion, regret, and underneath it all, the same desperate need to make something right. She lowered the gun. "I'm taking the files," she said, "and if you try to stop me—" "I won't," Kieran said, "but I am coming with you." "Why?" "Because," he said, "I'm not letting you do this alone." They copied the files in silence. Mara plugged in the portable hard drive while Kieran's men stood guard. Celeste appeared in the doorway halfway through, gun raised, eyes wild. "Mara?" "It's okay," Mara said. "We're leaving." Celeste looked at Kieran. "What's he doing here?" "Helping." "Like hell?" "Celeste," Mara's voice was firm. "Not now." The progress bar crawled across the screen. 50%, 60, 70. Then the building shook. An explosion ripped through the upper floors. Alarms screamed. The lights flickered. Kieran swore. "That's not ours." "Then whose?" The answer came in the form of gunfire tearing through the hallway outside. Kieran's men returned fire. One of them went down immediately, blood spraying across the servers. "We need to move," Kieran shouted. The hard drive beeped. Download complete. Mara ripped it out, shoved it in her jacket. "Go!" They ran. The hallways were chaos. Smoke, gunfire, men in tactical gear that weren't Kieran's, weren't FBI, weren't anyone Mara recognized. "Who the hell are they?" Celeste screamed. "Vale's backup plan," Kieran said grimly. "The buyers, the ones who want the ledger buried." They fought their way to the east stairwell. Mara fired until her magazine was empty, reloaded, fired again. Bodies dropped. She stopped counting. They burst through a side exit into the night air. More gunfire chased them across the waterfront. Kieran's SUV was waiting, engine running. They piled in. Kieran hit the gas. Bullets spiderwebbed the rear window. Mara ducked, pulling Celeste down with her. The SUV screamed through the industrial district, taking corners too fast. The city blurring past. "Where are we going?" Mara shouted. "Somewhere they won't follow," Kieran said. "Where?" He didn't answer. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a private airfield. A small jet sat on the tarmac, engines already warming up. Nadia Cross stood beside it, waiting. Mara's hand went to her gun. "What is this?" "Your way out," Nadia said. "All of you." "I'm not running." "You're not running," Nadia agreed. "You're regrouping. The ICC contact is in The Hague. We get you on that plane, get those files into the right hands, and you'll be protected. Witnesses, not fugitives." "And if I say no?" "Then you die tonight," Nadia said bluntly. "Because the people shooting at you back there? They're not going to stop. Not until you're dead and that hard drive is destroyed." Mara looked at Kieran. He met her gaze, said nothing. She looked at Celeste, who was bleeding from a graze on her arm, her face pale, but determined. "Your call," Celeste said. Mara thought about her father, about her mother, about every person she'd failed to save because she'd been too afraid to fight. She thought about the faces in those shipping containers, and she made her choice. "Get us on that plane," she said. The flight to The Hague took 8 hours. Mara spent most of it staring out the window, watching the Atlantic stretch beneath them like a dark promise. Celeste slept fitfully in the seat across from her. Kieran sat in the back, cleaning his weapons with mechanical precision. Nadia worked on her laptop, coordinating with the ICC, building the case that would hopefully put away everyone in the ledger. Mara pulled out the hard drive and held it in her palm. Such a small thing, barely weighed anything, but it contained the end of an empire. "You did it," Kieran said quietly, appearing beside her. Mara didn't look at him. "Did I? Or did you manipulate me into doing exactly what you wanted from the start? Does it matter?" "Yes." Kieran was quiet for a moment. "The video you saw, the one of me and your father, it's real. We did make a deal. He did promise me immunity, and I did agree to control you." Mara's jaw clenched. "But here's what the video doesn't show," Kieran continued. 2 days after that meeting, I went to Nadia, told her everything, gave her the recordings, became a double agent working to bring your father down from the inside. Mara finally looked at him. "Why should I believe that?" "Because," Kieran said, "if I was still working with him, I'd have killed you the moment you walked into that server room. Instead, I'm on a plane to Europe, about to testify against every criminal contact I've ever had, and I'll probably spend the rest of my life in witness protection." "You have immunity." "From the FBI," Kieran said. "Not from the people in that ledger. The moment I testify, I'm a dead man walking. We both are." Mara felt something twist in her chest. "Then why do it?" Kieran looked at her with something like wonder. "Because you made me believe it was worth it." Before Mara could respond, Nadia's voice cut through the cabin. "We've got a problem." Everyone turned. Nadia's face was white, staring at her laptop screen. "The Hague contact. He's been compromised. Someone got to him. She stopped. "He's dead." The cabin went silent. "How?" Kieran demanded. "Assassinated. 3 hours ago. His office was burned. Everything he had on the case is gone." Mara felt ice in her veins. "Who?" "I don't know, but whoever it is, they knew we were coming. They knew about the files." Nadia looked at Kieran. "Someone leaked." Kieran stood. Check the manifest. Who else knew about this flight? Nadia's fingers flew across the keyboard. Just us, the pilot, and... She stopped. Her face went slack. What? Mara said. The flight plan was filed by someone in the bureau. Someone I trust. Someone who... Nadia's voice dropped. Someone who reported directly to Senator Vale. The pieces clicked into place. It's not over, Mara whispered. The network. It's bigger than Dad. Bigger than any of us thought. Then we abort, Celeste said. Turn around. Find somewhere else to... There is nowhere else, Nadia said. The ledger's already leaked. We uploaded it at the gala, remember? Every intelligence agency in the world has a copy by now. The people in it know they're exposed. They're cleaning house, killing anyone who might testify. Then what do we do? Celeste asked. Mara looked at the hard drive in her hand, then at Kieran, then at Nadia. We don't run, she said. We go public. All of it. Every file, every name. We dump it on the internet where they can't bury it, where everyone can see. That's insane, Nadia said. You'll paint a target on your back the size of... I already have a target on my back, Mara interrupted. So do you. So does everyone on this plane. The only way we survive is if we make ourselves too visible to kill quietly. Kieran smiled. You want to start a war? No, Mara said. I want to end one. She handed the hard drive to Nadia. Can you do it? Upload everything? Make it impossible to take down? Nadia stared at the drive, then at Mara. Yes, she said. But once I do, there's no going back. Every government, every agency, every criminal organization on the planet will be coming after us. Good, Mara said. Let them come. They landed in Amsterdam instead of The Hague, switching flights, using fake passports Marcus had prepared. By the time they reached a secure location, a safe house Nadia's underground contacts had arranged, the hard drive's contents were already spreading across the internet. WikiLeaks, anonymous message boards, news outlets, every major publication on the planet. The Ledger of Souls went viral in under an hour. Mara watched the news coverage from a laptop in the safe house living room. Anchors struggled to process the scope of it. Senators resigning, CEOs arrested, international warrants issued. The network was collapsing in real time. We did it, Celeste whispered beside her. Not yet, Mara said, because she knew what came next. The retaliation. It started with the first death threat, then the second, then hundreds. The safe house location leaked within 24 hours. They had to move again, and again. 3 days after the upload, a bomb went off in a cafe 2 blocks from where they'd been staying that morning. 4 days after, an assassin broke into the hotel where Celeste was sleeping. She killed him with a lamp in her bare hands. 5 days after, Kieran took a bullet meant for Mara. It caught him in the ribs, punched through his lung. He survived, barely. Mara sat beside his hospital bed, another safe house, another anonymous doctor, and watched him breathe through a tube. This is my fault, she said. Kieran's eyes opened. He pulled out the oxygen mask with shaking hands. No, he rasped. It's theirs. I should have listened to Nadia, should have found another way. There wasn't another way. Kieran coughed, winced. And you know it. Mara took his hand. I'm tired, Kieran. I'm so tired. I know. I don't know how much longer I can do this. Kieran squeezed her hand. Then we end it. Tonight. One more move. One final play. What play? He smiled through the pain. The one your father taught you. Make them think you're broken. Make them think you've given up. And then strike when they're not looking, Mara finished. Exactly. The press conference was Mara's idea. A live broadcast. Prime time. Every major network. She would appear publicly for the first time since the Ledger went live, announce that she was turning herself in to the International Criminal Court, and beg for protection. It was bait, and the people hunting them would take it. Nadia coordinated with what was left of her trusted contacts. Celeste argued against it. Kieran, still recovering, tried to talk her out of it from his hospital bed. But Mara had made up her mind. They want me, she said, so let's give them a target they can't resist. The broadcast was scheduled for 8 p.m. The location, a neutral government building in Brussels with enough security to make an attack difficult but not impossible. Mara sat in the green room waiting, her hands steady for the first time in days. She was wearing a simple black dress. No armor, no weapons. Just her and a microphone, and a message that would either save her life or end it. Kieran appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily on a crutch. "You shouldn't be here," Mara said. "Neither should you." "Kieran, if you're walking into that room," he said, "I'm walking in with you." Mara stood, cross to him. "This isn't your fight anymore." "Yes, it is," Kieran said. "It's been my fight since the day I met you." Before Mara could respond, Nadia's voice came through their earpieces. "We've got movement. South entrance. 3 vehicles. Armed personnel." Mara's pulse spiked. "How many?" "At least a dozen. Maybe more." "That's too many for security to handle." "I know," Nadia said grimly. "They're coming for you." Kieran pulled out a handgun, checked the magazine. "Then let's make sure they regret it." The doors to the green room burst open, not the assassins. Celeste, covered in blood, eyes wild. "They're already inside," she gasped. "They killed the guards. They're coming up the stairs. We have maybe 2 minutes." Mara looked at Kieran, at Celeste, at the door that led to the stage where cameras were waiting. She made her choice. "Get to the broadcast booth," she told Nadia through the earpiece. "Make sure the cameras stay live no matter what happens." "Mara, what are you—" "Just do it." Mara walked out of the green room. Kieran and Celeste followed. They reached the stage just as the first assassin appeared at the far entrance. The cameras were already rolling, the world was watching. And Mara Vale stepped into the light, looked directly into the lens, and said the words that would change everything. "My name is Mara Vale. My father was Senator Richard Vale. And I'm here to tell you the truth about everyone who's trying to kill me." The assassins opened fire, the cameras kept rolling, and the final battle began. The first bullet shattered the podium 6 inches from Mara's head. She didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on the camera, kept talking even as splinters of wood exploded around her. "The people shooting at me right now are the same people who bought and sold human beings for decades. The same people my father protected. The same people who think they're untouchable." Kieran fired from behind her, dropping the first assassin before he could get off a second shot. Celeste had already moved to cover the left flank, her weapon barking in rapid succession. "They're not," Mara continued, her voice steady. "And the proof is in the ledger. Every name, every transaction, every—" The lights exploded overhead. Glass rained down. Mara dove behind the podium as automatic gunfire tore through the stage. The cameras kept rolling, their red lights blinking in the darkness like tiny hearts refusing to stop beating. Nadia's voice screamed in her earpiece, "Mara, get out of there!" "Not yet," Mara said. She could hear them coming, heavy boots on marble. Commands shouted in at least 3 different languages. They weren't just assassins anymore. They were a coordinated strike team, and they'd brought enough firepower to level the building. Kieran appeared beside her, blood soaking through his shirt where his stitches had torn. "We're pinned down. East and west exits are blocked." "How many?" Mara asked. "Too many." Celeste slid in from the other side, her face streaked with smoke and someone else's blood. "North stairwell's clear, but it won't be for long. If we're going to move, we move now." Mara looked at the cameras, still broadcasting, still showing the world exactly what these people were willing to do to keep their secrets buried. 30 more seconds, she said. "We don't have 30 seconds. "Then make them count." Mara stood up, fully exposed, and walked back to the podium. Every survival instinct in her body screamed at her to run. But she'd spent her whole life running, from her father, from the truth, from herself. Not anymore. She looked into the camera and spoke. "My name is Mara Vale. 6 months ago, I was nobody. The invisible daughter. The fixer who cleaned up messes and asked for nothing in return. But I found out what my father really was, what he'd been doing for years, and I made a choice." Gunfire erupted again, closer this time. She could see the muzzle flashes in the hallway. "I chose to fight back. I chose to expose him. And I chose to make sure every person complicit in his crimes faced justice." She paused. "They're trying to kill me for that, right now, on live television, and that should tell you everything you need to know about how desperate they are." A flashbang detonated somewhere to her left. Mara's ears rang, but she kept talking. If I die tonight, the ledger survives. If they kill everyone on this stage, the evidence survives. Because the truth doesn't die when the messenger does. It spreads. It grows. It becomes something they can't control. She smiled at the camera, and that terrifies them. Kieran grabbed her arm. Mara, we're out of time. I know. She looked at the red light one last time, then she turned and ran. They made it to the north stairwell with seconds to spare. Behind them, the stage exploded in a hail of grenades and automatic fire. The cameras died, but the footage had already been transmitted to a dozen backup servers around the world. The message was out. Mara's lungs burned as they descended the stairs 3 at a time. Kieran was struggling, his breathing ragged, blood leaving a trail behind him. Celeste had to half carry him down the last flight. They burst through the ground floor exit into an underground parking garage. Nadia's SUV was waiting, engine running, back doors open. Move! Nadia screamed. They piled in. The SUV peeled out before the doors even closed. Behind them, the strike team emerged from the stairwell, weapons raised. Bullets punched through the rear window. Mara covered her head as glass rained down. Celeste returned fire through the shattered window until her magazine ran dry. Where are we going? Mara shouted over the chaos. Someplace they won't follow, Nadia said, taking a corner so hard the SUV went up on 2 wheels. There's no place they won't follow. Yes, there is. Nadia didn't elaborate. She just drove. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to the American embassy. Mara stared at the building, her mind struggling to process. You can't be serious. You're a U.S. citizen who just exposed an international trafficking network on live television, Nadia said. Right now, this is the only place on Earth where they can't touch you without starting a diplomatic incident. Or they just blow up the embassy. They won't, Nadia said. Too many witnesses. Too much international attention. The broadcast went viral. Half the world just watched someone try to assassinate you on live TV. If you die now, it proves everything you said was true. Kieran coughed, blood flecking his lips. She's right. It's the safest play. Mara looked at him. His face was gray, his breathing shallow. He was dying, and they both knew it. We need to get him to a hospital, Mara said. Embassy has a medical facility, Nadia said. Come on. They carried Kieran inside. Embassy security met them at the entrance, weapons drawn, confusion written across their faces. But Nadia flashed her credentials and barked orders in a voice that left no room for argument. Within minutes, they had Kieran on a gurney, medical staff swarming him, shouting instructions Mara couldn't follow. She tried to stay with him, but they pushed her back, pulled him through a set of double doors, and then he was gone. Mara stood in the hallway, covered in blood and smoke, her ears still ringing, her hands shaking for the first time in hours. Celeste put an arm around her. He'll make it. You don't know that. No, Celeste admitted, but he's survived this long. That has to count for something. The next 72 hours were a blur of debriefings, depositions, and international conference calls. The ledger had triggered a cascade of arrests. Senators, CEOs, judges, diplomats, people Mara had seen at her father's galas, people she'd served drinks to, people who'd never looked at her twice. All of them in custody or on the run. The trafficking network was collapsing, but not quietly. There were more assassination attempts, car bombs in London, a shooting in Geneva, a coordinated attack on an ICC facility in Amsterdam. But with every attack, the world watched, and the more they tried to silence the truth, the louder it became. Mara spent most of her time in a secure room on the embassy's 3rd floor, giving statements to prosecutors from a dozen different countries. She walked them through everything: the wedding, the safe house, the files, the gala. She held nothing back. When they asked about her father, she told them the truth. That he'd sold her mother. That he'd planned to sell her too. That she'd watched Kieran put a bullet in him and felt nothing. The prosecutors took notes with carefully neutral expressions, but Mara could see it in their eyes. They weren't sure if she was a hero or an accomplice. She wasn't sure either. Kieran woke up on the 4th day. Mara was sitting beside his bed, reading through deposition transcripts when she heard him groan. She looked up to find his eyes open, unfocused but aware. Hey, she said softly. Hey. His voice was rough, barely a whisper. Did we win? I don't know yet. Kieran tried to smile. It came out as more of a grimace. That's honest. I'm done lying. Good. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. The broadcast. Did it work? Yes. It's everywhere. The arrest started within hours. The network's falling apart. And you? Are you safe? Mara thought about the question. About the death threats that still came in daily. About the assassins who'd already tried twice more to breach embassy security. About the fact that she'd probably never be able to walk down a street without looking over her shoulder again. Safe is relative, she said. Kieran opened his eyes again, looked at her with something like understanding. I'm sorry. For what? For dragging you into this. For using you. For... He stopped, coughed. For not being honest from the start. You were honest, Mara said. Eventually. That's more than most people manage. It's not enough. No, Mara agreed. But it's something. They sat in silence for a while. The machines beeped. The fluorescent lights hummed. Outside the window, Brussels continued on, oblivious to the small war being fought in the shadows. What happens now? Kieran asked. You recover. I testify. We hope the people we're trying to put away don't kill us first. And after that? Mara looked at her hands. I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. You should. Why? Because, Kieran said, we're going to survive this. And when we do, you'll need to decide what kind of life you want. Mara met his eyes. What if I don't know? Then you figure it out. He reached for her hand, his grip weak but steady. But whatever you decide, Mara, make sure it's yours, not your father's, not mine. Yours. The trial started 6 weeks later. It wasn't one trial. It was dozens, coordinated across multiple jurisdictions, prosecuting everyone from low-level traffickers to government officials. The ledger had exposed an empire, and dismantling it required a legal army. Mara testified in 9 different proceedings. Each time she walked through the same story, answered the same questions, faced down the same hostile cross-examinations from defense attorneys trying to paint her as an opportunist or a liar or a vengeful daughter out to destroy her father's legacy. She didn't break, not when they showed her photos of her father's body, not when they questioned her relationship with Kieran, not when they suggested she'd known about the trafficking all along and had only come forward to save herself. She told the truth, every ugly, uncomfortable piece of it. And slowly, conviction by conviction, the network crumbled. Celeste testified too. She was quieter than Mara, more fragile, but when she spoke about Elias, about watching him die trying to do the right thing, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Kieran's testimony came last. He'd recovered enough to walk with a cane, though Mara knew he was still in pain. He took the stand wearing a dark suit that made him look more like a federal agent than a crime lord. He walked the prosecutors through his entire operation, the deals he'd made, the people he'd worked with, the shipments he'd allowed through and the ones he'd sabotaged. He admitted to everything, the violence, the manipulation, the years he'd spent living a double life. And when the defense tried to paint him as a criminal playing hero, he looked them dead in the eye and said something that silenced the entire courtroom. I'm not a hero. I'm someone who realized too late that you can't fight monsters by becoming one. But I tried. And I'd do it again. Because the alternative was letting them win. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Kieran Voss was sentenced to 20 years, suspended pending his continued cooperation with international authorities. House arrest, witness protection, a life in the margins. He didn't appeal. 9 months after the gala, Mara stood in front of a small apartment in Stockholm. It wasn't much. 2 rooms, a view of the water, but it was hers. No cameras, no security detail, no one watching. The witness protection program had given her a new identity, new papers, a small stipend to start over. She'd chosen Stockholm because it was far from Washington, far from the memories, far from everything she used to be. Celeste had made a similar choice. She was in Barcelona, using Elias's life insurance money to start a nonprofit helping trafficking survivors. They talked once a week, careful conversations on encrypted lines, both of them still learning how to be sisters instead of survivors. Kieran was in a government facility somewhere in the American Midwest. They'd allowed him 1 supervised call a month. He'd used his first one to make sure Mara was safe, his second to ask if she ever thought about visiting. She hadn't answered yet, because she didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to see him, to thank him for saving her life, even if he'd endangered it first, to understand if what they'd had was real or just two broken people clinging to each other in a storm. But another part of her, the part that had spent her whole life being defined by her relationships to other people, needed to figure out who she was alone. So she stood in her empty apartment and made herself a promise. She would build something new, something that had nothing to do with her father or Kieran or the violence that had consumed the last year of her life. She would find work that mattered, build relationships that weren't transactions, learn to sleep without nightmares. She would learn to be Mara Vale, not the senator's daughter, not the fixer, not the widow of a crime lord, just Mara, Bussin. 6 months later, she was working at a legal aid clinic in downtown Stockholm, helping immigrants navigate the asylum process. It was quiet work, important work, the kind of thing that would have made her father laugh. She was good at it. She'd just finished a consultation with a Syrian family when her supervisor knocked on her door. "There's someone here to see you," he said. Mara frowned. "I don't have any more appointments today." "I know, but he says it's important." Something in his tone made Mara's pulse spike. She stood slowly, her hand automatically going to the panic button under her desk, a remnant of paranoia she couldn't quite shake. "Who is it?" Her supervisor stepped aside. Kieran stood in the hallway. He looked different, thinner, older. The kind of aging that came from stress instead of years. He was wearing civilian clothes, jeans and a sweater, and leaning on a cane. "Hi," he said. Mara's breath caught. "What are you doing here?" "I got released early. Good behavior. Continued cooperation." He smiled faintly. "Turns out testifying against half the criminal underworld buys you some goodwill." "They let you leave the country?" "With supervision. I've got a handler checking in twice a day, but yeah, I'm free. Sort of." Mara didn't know what to say. She'd imagined this moment 100 times, rehearsed what she'd tell him, how she'd react, but now that he was standing in front of her, all those carefully prepared words vanished. "Why are you here?" she asked finally. Kieran leaned against the doorframe. "Because I made you a promise once, back in the safe house. Do you remember?" "Which one?" "I said if we survived, we'd figure it out together. That was before—" Mara stopped. "A lot's happened since then." "I know." "And you still think there's something to figure out?" Kieran looked at her with those steady gray eyes that had seen too much and somehow still held hope. "I think we both spent our whole lives being used by other people. And maybe we deserve a chance to figure out what we want. Not what anyone expects, just what we want." Mara felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking, opening. "I don't know if I can do this," she said quietly. "Do what?" "Trust you, trust anyone. After everything—" "Then don't," Kieran said. "Not yet. Just let me buy you coffee. Let me tell you what I've been doing for the past 6 months. Let me prove that I'm not the man who walked into that cathedral a year ago." Mara studied him, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle. She didn't find one. "Coffee," she said finally. "That's all." Kieran smiled. "That's enough." They sat in a small cafe near the waterfront, watching boats drift past in the late afternoon sun. Kieran told her about his time in custody, the interrogations, the depositions, the slow process of dismantling everything he'd built. He talked about the people he'd helped put away, including some who'd once been his friends. "Do you regret it?" Mara asked. "Turning on them? No." Kieran stirred his coffee absently. "But I regret how long it took me to do it. All the people who got hurt while I was trying to play both sides." "You were trying to survive." "So were they." Mara didn't have an answer for that. She sipped her coffee and watched the water, thinking about all the people in the ledger whose lives had been destroyed while she'd been filing her father's paperwork and pretending not to notice. "What about you?" Kieran asked. "Do you regret it? Exposing him?" "All of it. The wedding, the plan, marrying a stranger to escape your father." Mara thought about the question, really thought about it. "No," she said finally. "I regret that it had to happen the way it did. I regret the people who died. but I don't regret fighting back." Good. They sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable. Just two people who'd survived a war together, trying to figure out what peace looked like. "Can I ask you something?" Mara said. "Anything. That day in the cathedral, when you agreed to marry me, did you mean any of it, or was it all just part of the plan?" Kieran set down his coffee. "I meant the vows." "Which part?" "The part where I promised to protect you, even if it meant protecting you from me." Mara felt her throat tighten. "And now?" "Now," Kieran said, "I'm asking if you want to try again. No plans, no angles. Just two people figuring out if there's something real underneath all the damage." Mara looked at him, at the scars he carried, at the exhaustion in his eyes, at the man who'd been a monster and a savior, and somehow both at once. "I don't know if I'm ready," she said honestly. "That's okay," Kieran said. "I can wait." "For how long?" "However long it takes." Over the next 3 months, Kieran became a regular presence in Mara's life. Not a lover, not even really a friend, just someone who showed up, who asked how her day was and actually listened to the answer, who brought her coffee when she was working late and didn't expect anything in return. Slowly, carefully, Mara started to trust him again. They talked about the things they'd never told anyone else. Kieran opened up about his childhood, about a father who'd trained him to be ruthless and a mother who'd died trying to escape. Mara told him about the years after her mother disappeared, about being raised by a father who saw her as a tool instead of a daughter. They talked about the people they'd lost, Elias, Evelyn, all the faces in the shipping containers whose names they'd never know. And they talked about the future, about what it meant to build something clean after a lifetime of blood and lies. One night, 6 months after Kieran had shown up in Stockholm, they were walking along the waterfront when Mara stopped. "I want to show you something," she said. She pulled out her phone and opened a document. It was a proposal for a new organization, a watchdog group focused on exposing trafficking networks before they could take root. It would use everything Mara had learned, every contact she'd made, every skill she'd developed cleaning up her father's messes. But this time, she'd use those skills to stop people like him instead of protecting them. "I've been working on this for months," she said. "I wasn't sure if I'd actually go through with it, but I think..." She paused. "I think it's what I'm supposed to do." Kieran read through the proposal, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he looked at her with something like pride. "This is good," he said. "Really good." "You think it'll work?" "I think," Kieran said, "that you just found your purpose." Mara smiled. For the first time in a year, it felt real. The organization launched 8 months later with funding from several trafficking survivors' advocacy groups and a small grant from the ICC. Mara called it Vesper, the same code name Kieran had used during his undercover work. It felt right, taking something that had been about deception and turning it into something honest. Celeste joined as a consultant, helping design programs for survivor support. Nadia came on as an advisor, using her FBI connections to help identify potential targets. And Kieran became Vesper's lead investigator. It made sense. He knew the networks better than anyone, knew how they operated, how they recruited, how they hid. He could spot a trafficking operation from a mile away and dismantle it before it claimed a single victim. He was good at it, better than good. And for the first time in his life, he was using those skills for something that didn't require him to become a monster. 2 years after the gala, Mara stood in front of the United Nations General Assembly. She'd been invited to speak about Vesper's work, about the networks they'd exposed, about the survivors they'd helped, about what it meant to fight back against systems that seemed too big to touch. She wore a simple black suit, no armor, no weapons, just her voice and the truth. "My name is Mara Vale," she began, "and I'm here to tell you that the fight against human trafficking isn't about perfect heroes or easy victories. It's about people who've survived the worst humanity has to offer and chose to fight back anyway." She talked about her mother, about the ledger, about the years she'd spent running and fighting and nearly dying. And she talked about what came after. "People ask me if it was worth it," she said. "If exposing my father, destroying his empire, and putting my own life at risk was worth the price I paid. And my answer is this: I didn't have a choice. None of us do. When you see evil, you can ignore it or you can fight it. There's no middle ground. She paused, looking out at the assembled representatives from nearly every country on Earth. I chose to fight, and I'm still here. So are the thousands of people we've helped rescue. So are the networks we've dismantled. So is the truth. She smiled. Evil is only unstoppable if we let it be. And I'm done letting it. The assembly rose in a standing ovation. Mara walked off the stage and found Kieran waiting in the wings. That was good, he said. I didn't throw up, so I'm calling it a win, he smiled. You've come a long way from the woman who hid in the shadows. So have you. Kieran looked at her for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. Coffee? He asked. Mara took his hand. Coffee sounds good. 3 years after this gala, on a quiet Tuesday in Stockholm, Mara and Kieran stood in a small registry office. No cathedral this time, no political theater, just them and a registrar and 2 witnesses, Celeste and Nadia, both of them smiling through tears. The vows were simple, honest. Kieran promised to stand beside her, not above her or behind her, to be her partner, not her protector. Mara promised the same. When it was over, they walked out into the Stockholm sunshine as husband and wife. For real this time. No deals, no leverage, no plans, just 2 people who'd survived hell and decided they were stronger together than apart. You know this won't be easy, Kieran said as they walked along the water. Nothing worth doing ever is. And we'll have to keep looking over our shoulders for the rest of our lives. Probably. And we might fail. The organization might fail. All of it might. Mara stopped walking and turned to face him. Kieran. Yeah? Shut up and enjoy the moment. He smiled. Yes, ma'am. They kept walking. Behind them, the shadows of their past stretched long and dark, but ahead the water sparkled in the light, and for the first time in either of their lives, the future looked like something they might actually survive. 5 years after the gala, Mara received a letter. It came in a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. A woman in her 60s, gray hair, tired eyes, standing in front of a small house somewhere warm and coastal. On the back of the photo, someone had written a single sentence in shaky handwriting. Your mother would be proud. Mara stared at the photo until her hands shook. She'd spent years trying to find Evelyn Vale, following every lead, checking every death certificate. She'd convinced herself her mother was dead, that the Prague suicide was real. But this was hope. She showed the photo to Kieran that night. He studied it carefully, then looked at her with quiet understanding. What do you want to do? He asked. Mara thought about it, about the life she'd built, about Vesper and the people they'd saved and the work that still needed doing, about the fact that some answers came too late to change anything. I want to keep it, she said, and I want to keep going. You don't want to find her? I spent my whole life looking for someone who wasn't there, Mara said quietly. My father, my family, some version of myself that made sense. And I finally realized I don't need to find them. I need to become them. She looked at Kieran. My mother survived whatever hell she went through. She got free. That's enough. That's everything. Kieran pulled her close. You're sure? I'm sure. They sat together in the quiet apartment, the photo resting on the table between them. Proof that some people escaped and some stories ended not with justice, but with survival. And sometimes survival was enough. 10 years after the gala, Mara stood on a stage in Geneva, accepting an award for Vesper's work. They'd helped dismantle 17 major trafficking networks, rescued over 3,000 people, trained investigators in 42 countries. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. When they asked her to give a speech, she kept it short. I'm not a hero, she said. I'm someone who got tired of being invisible, who got tired of cleaning up messes instead of preventing them, who decided that if the world was going to remember me, it would be for something that mattered. She paused, looking out at the crowd, at Kieran in the front row, at Celeste beside him, at all the survivors who'd joined Vesper's staff and turned their trauma into purpose. We don't get to choose what happens to us, Mara said, but we get to choose what we do about it. And I chose to fight. Not because I'm brave, not because I'm special, but because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. She held up the award, a piece of crystal that caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 directions. "This isn't mine," she said. "It belongs to every person who survived and chose to keep going. Every person who looked at the darkness and decided to light a match instead of hiding. Every person who said, 'Not on my watch,' and meant it." She set the award down and walked off the stage. Outside, Kieran was waiting. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Mara looked at him. At the man who'd started as a stranger, become a partner, and somehow turned into home. "Yeah," she said. "I'm ready." They walked out into the Geneva evening, their shadows merging into one on the pavement behind them. And somewhere in the distance, in cities and countries they'd never see, the work they'd started continued. People they'd trained kept fighting. Survivors they'd rescued kept healing. The networks they'd exposed kept crumbling. The war wasn't over. It would never be over. But for tonight, they'd won, and that was enough. Well, 15 years after the gala, Mara woke up in her Stockholm apartment to find Kieran already awake, staring out the window at the water. "You okay?" she asked. He didn't turn. "I was thinking about Elias." "Yeah?" "He'd be 43 this year, probably married, maybe kids. He always wanted kids." Mara got out of bed and stood beside him, taking his hand. "I'm sorry. Me too." Kieran was quiet for a moment. "But I think he'd be proud of what we built, of what his death meant, of the people we saved because of what he tried to do." "I think so too." They stood together in the early morning light, two people who'd survived by refusing to give up, holding on to each other and the life they'd built from ash and blood and stubborn hope. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Celeste hadn't run?" Kieran asked. "If you'd never walked into that cathedral?" Mara thought about it, about the woman she'd been then. Invisible, afraid, living half a life in the margins of her father's empire. "I'd probably still be in Washington," she said, "still fixing his messes, still pretending I didn't know what he was." "Would you have been happy?" "I don't think I knew what happiness was back then." Kieran turned to look at her. "And now?" Mara smiled. "Now I do." She kissed him, soft and certain. And in that moment, everything they'd survived, the violence, the lies, the years of running and fighting and nearly dying, became worth it, because they were here, together, alive. And for people who'd spent so long in the dark, that was more than enough. It was everything. Next, the end, Mara Vale had been raised to be invisible. Her father had tried to make her useful, silent, and disposable. But he'd failed. Because Mara learned something in the shadows that her father never understood. Invisibility wasn't weakness. It was power. The power to see everything, to know everything, to move through the world unnoticed until the moment you chose to strike. And when she struck, empires fell. She didn't rule from a throne. She didn't need the spotlight. She built something better than power. She built purpose. And beside Kieran Voss, the man who'd been her captor, her partner, and finally her choice, she didn't simply survive the darkness. She turned it into light, and that light spread further than either of them would ever know, touching lives they'd never meet, saving people they'd never see, proving that one person refusing to stay silent could change the world. Mara Vale started as nobody. She became someone who mattered, and that made all the difference.